and wellness communication, a holistic approach. I'm Mahmoud Haq, a faculty member of the Department of Mass Communication and Journalism, Begum Rokeya University, Rangpur, Bangladesh. Actually, I am a multi-professional, worked in journalism, research, teaching, and training. Before joining teaching, I was actually the metro editor of the Daily Star, a leading English dailies in Bangladesh and in the South Asian region, you know. And actually, I am the policy consultant of various local and international NGOs, including UNDP. I've conducted many researches on health communications, journalism, media, and human rights is my another sectors. I am also the rights activist in South Asian region. Now, through this session, the panelists actually will present their papers on various aspects of health communications, its practices, approaches, and its impact on the people's well-being and health promotion. We know that health communication is now getting the attention it deserves. During this COVID-19 pandemic, the role of health communication is significant as it is used as an alternative to medicine, to vaccine. It's a preventive mechanism like a vaccine or drugs to combat the deadly pandemic. When the vaccine was not invented, the only way to combat the pandemic is the communication. That's health communications. So it is very, very important issues now we are discussing in this session. This is like a vaccine to fight the pandemic. If you will not wear mask, then we'll be affected. So this is the message. This is the communication, and this is the health communication. And this is the crisis communication. Sometimes it's called it pandemic communication. So this session examines the strategies and practices and health education and promotion, such as mental health, maternal health, and neonatal health. The communication practices of our health frontliners will also be discussed or presented at this session. Now, I like to invite the panelists to present their papers. Actually, each panelist will get 10 minutes to present his or her paper. After all presentation, question and answer session will be open. And you can briefly drop questions here on the chat room, mentioning your name and the presenter's name, requesting the answers in this chat room. Now I'm inviting Jais Marlin P. Augustine to present his paper, She is the research scholar, Department of Communication and Journalism, University of Kerala, India. Please come up with your presentation.
Thank you, Professor Mohammadul Haq. Very good morning to all. And I am very glad to present my paper in the prestigious institution like AMIC. And AMIC is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. So I'm very thankful to grant me an opportunity to present my paper here. Let me share my presentation screen. Yeah, my paper is the editorial practices on specialized health content, a study on popular Malayalam health magazines. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah. As you know that Kerala is the southernmost state of India and Malayalam is the official language of Kerala. There are a number of health magazines in Malayalam and I focused on the editorial practices of major health magazines in Malayalam. Let me begin my presentation with the famous quotation of Mahatma Gandhi, the father of our nation. He said that it is health that is the real wealth and not pieces of gold and silver. That is the importance of health. Then according to WHO, health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Kerala has a well-acclaimed health model and it holds first position among other states of India. The socio-economic progress of the state has a key role in this achievement. The state has the highest literacy rate of 96% and the male literacy rate is 97.4 and female literacy rate is 95.2. And it is greater than national figures and the increased female literacy rate has also a significant account in the healthcare development of the state. This table represents some indicators and it is a comparison between India and Kerala. The figures is evident that Kerala has very good health indicators compared to India. The infant mortality rate of Kerala is only 7 and for India it is 32 and all other indicators there showed specific differences between the national figures and the state figures. And Keralites have a high affinity towards the media because as I said earlier, Keralites have a very good literacy rate and obviously there are more consumption of media in the state. Around 40 television channels in Malayalam and more than 9 out of 10 women and men watch television channels at least once a week. And we have around 15 daily newspapers in Kerala and around 30 periodicals in various sections. Also, 89% of men and 77% of women read a newspaper or magazine at least once a week. There are a lot of specialized magazines in Malayalam. Major newspaper publishing houses have their own health magazines in Kerala. Arogyam, Arogya Masiga, Arogya Mangalam, Ayur Arogyam, etc. Some of them. And in Malayalam, the word Arogyam means health. My study is focused on the two major health magazines in Malayalam, namely Arogyam and Arogya Masiga. These two publications were by the major newspaper houses in Malayalam. And my study period was June to December 2019, and just before the COVID pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic. And the study method is content analysis of 12 magazines, expert interview with the editors of magazines. And the major theories adopted for my study is agenda setting theory, media dependency theory, and uses and gratification theory. Then let me move on to the specialized magazines which I studied. First one is Arogya Masika. As I said, it is published by the prominent newspaper house in Kerala, Madhubhumi. The magazine started publication in 1997 with a circulation of around 2 lakhs. Then Arogyam, it is published by another major newspaper house in Kerala. And this magazine started publication in 2004 with a circulation of around 2 lakhs. The specific objectives of my study is to analyze the trends of health reporting in specialized magazines, analyze the importance given by Malayalam health magazines for different categories of content, then examine the factors which determine the theme selection in these issues. And I found 3 major points in my study. First one, lifestyle management is the prominent subject area in the health magazines. Second one, there is a special item called special focus item, and that is the prominent section of content in the magazines. Third one, magazines have some editorial preferences to increase the readership and circulation. The lifestyle management is the prominent subject area in these health magazines because as we all know that lifestyle diseases are increases in globally, and especially Kerala have a high rate of lifestyle diseases, and Arogyam and Arogya Masika dedicated more than 20% of their total content space to provide information on lifestyle management related matters like fitness, diet, beauty, mental wellness, etc. This figure indicates some comparison between India and Kerala in terms of lifestyle diseases. Prominent lifestyle diseases like diabetes and hypertension is very increased level in Kerala compared to India. So that may be the reason of this increased consideration given to lifestyle oriented matter in these health magazines in Kerala. Then there are different types of content categories in health magazines, and each magazine issue has a projected theme in that issue, and that theme is presented as a special focus item of that particular issue, and that item is the prominent content of that issue. And Arogyam presented special focus item after the first 70 pages, while Arogya Masika placed the item within the first 25 pages of the issue. So these 2 health magazines have some differences in the presentation of this special focus item, and 2 magazines have their own preferences to present this item. And there are some other content in these health magazines other than the special focus item. There are articles and features on relevant health issues, columns of experts, readers' question and answer sessions. These are the major contents in the selected magazine issues. Then the magazine houses have their own editorial preferences. The editors consider the interest of readers, and they found that people are very eagerly waiting for know about the lifestyle diseases content because lifestyle disorders are increasing in Kerala. So the editors given more priority to lifestyle diseases. Also, each issue of the magazine was presented with attractive cover pages, professional layout and design, good presentation of content with headings, subheadings, infographics, and appropriate pictures. Because the editors are very concerned about the appearance of the magazine, and obviously they know that the appearance and outlook of the magazine is very much important for the increased circulation and readability of the matter. Both the magazines had given some additional items to increase the circulation. That means some booklets or exclusive guides which provide health information and incentives like vegetables, seed packets, etc. with the magazine issues. This sort of non-content marketing strategies are performed by major health magazines in Malayalam to increase their readership and circulation. These are the major findings of my study, and it's all from my today. Thank you.
Thank you, Augustine, for
Thank you, sir.
your nice presentation. Actually, the content is the key, and the health content is actually changing the awareness, creating the awareness, change attitudes, practices that ultimately help for health and well-being. So, editorial practices on a specialized health content, a study on popular Malayalam health magazine. It's a nice presentation, and I think that editorial practices you can define how you think that about the editorial practices. You know, the magazine has specialized sections, the editorial, and other section is reporting or like that, features, maybe others. But you should operationalize the editorial practices, actually how you will define and how you will fix your window to conduct your research.
Yeah, the editorial practices means the considerations or priorities given by the editors of these two magazines.
Yeah.
And yes. I just made some telephone interview with these major magazine editors, especially the studied magazines Arogyam and Arogyam Asiga. The content editors of these magazines were interviewed by telephone, and they provide some information regarding their selection process of content. And according to that information, I made this study.
Thank you for your clarification, and
thank you, sir.
Thank you. Nice presentation. And next, please close your presentation. And now I like to request two presenters jointly will present their papers. Shibio Shao, PhD candidate, School of Journalism, Renmin University of China. And another presenters, Jiang, graduate student, School of Journalism and Communication, One University, China. Please come up with your presentation. Please start.
Okay. Good afternoon, dear moderator and presenters. I'm Xia Yang from Wuhan University. The paper I'd like to share is Reports of Health Misinformation in China's Newspaper, a Warrior Landscape of Health Communication. My co-authors are Shibo Shao from Renmin University of China and Shi Wenwu from Wuhan University. The first part is our introduction. In modern times, people are facing more pressure and health problems than in the past. Public's demand for health information is conducted to its development in the supply market. As a result, it leads to the spreading of health misinformation, HMI abbreviated. It is necessary and urgent to produce and disseminate corrective health information to clarify, refute, expose, and correct HMI. COVID-19 is accompanied by the overabundance of information, which leads to the generation of HMI that weaken the visibility of credible and reliable information. In this regard, the Chinese media, represented by newspaper, began to clarify and correct HMI of COVID-19 and improve its persuasive effect in various ways by controlling the spread of HMI. In this background, we made our literature review in three aspects. The first is health misinformation and news reports. Health misinformation refers to explicitly false health misinformation, opposite to scientific health information. The inundation of health misinformation has become a severe public health problem in China. As the shapest outlook in society, the media's report and response to health misinformation will gradually affect the audience cognition and judgment of information. However, health misinformation frequently appears in media coverage. Many traditional media plays essential roles as gatekeeper, which serves as a place where false information is corrected. Like those mentioned above, due to the important role of media in diffusion of HMI, we posed the following research questions. Our first research question is, what are the subjects of HMI reported by Chinese newspaper? And our second report question is, with the patterns and presentations, is HMI reported by Chinese newspapers? The second part of our literature review is the correction of health misinformation, the debunk message. More problematic than the privilege of health misinformation is difficulty of correcting it. To date, it is a factual problem of eliminating the harm of diffusion of misinformation in health domain. There are three ways to diminish health misinformation. The first is to warn and suggest people when they are initially exposed to health misinformation. The second way is to recall false information, and the third way is to correct it. The core strategy of combating misinformation is to attach importance to the information source, making the audience recognize attributes of health misinformation, which violates the scientific and medical machinism of information generation. It is also a pathway to correction. So our third research question is how to refute and correct HMI in news reports. And the third part is news frame and reports of health misinformation. News frames are with functions of selection and emphasis. The selection and emphasis on some news frames usually disclose or suggest the implied specific news topic, tendencies, values, and so on. Our study explores the correction of health misinformation on Chinese newspaper coverage, mainly examining the text as a critical locus of frames. The correction frames of health misinformation refers to text refuting rumors and the construction form of anti-misinformation language, usually a correction method of combining diverse frames to achieve a more pleasing effort of refuting health misinformation. So our fourth question is, what frames, including correction, are employed by Chinese news information to report HMI? Then is a part of our method. In this study, we constructed a content analysis and coded a large number of reports about HMI in China from 2010 to 2020 contains the outbreak of COVID-19 as well. On the one hand, we discussed how to report and correct HMI in Chinese newspaper. On the other hand, what frames and utterance the Chinese newspaper used to revamp the HMI. The coding scheme mainly consists of the following categories: primary news release types of HMI, correction of HMI, behavior recommendation. They is a part of our results. As shown in table 1, first, three primary subjects were discovered. Food curation, food safety accounts for 30.3%, and disease treatment and prescription account for 28.9%, and healthcare account 25.1%. Regarding the source of HMI correction, the coding process adopts the multiple choice questions methods. As shown in the second table, research institutions, medical institutions, official missions, and classical media are the main sources which play the role of correcting health misinformation in Chinese newspaper. As shown in this table, making health literacy profitable mentioned non-authoritative pundit and fast-spreading social media are the main reasons of diffusion of HMI. As for the frames of correcting HMI, the study contains the use of the reporting frames and the correction frames. In the reporting frames, we found that scientific and knowledge frame are the most commonly used in Chinese paper when reporting health misinformation. Firstly, scientific and knowledge frame and public responsibility frames are often used to report HMI related to food curation or food safety. Secondly, when the subject is connected with disease treatment and prescription, the new frames incline to utilize illustrated exam frames and governmental action frames. Thirdly, daily life frames are often shown in news coverage when the subject about healthcare. Here is a detailed table of reporting frames and the health information subjects I talked about before. And we divided the correction frames into central correction and peripheral correction. The most prevalent control frame of correction is factually fallacy, which illustrates the fact of phenomenon is wrong. Besides, there are two other frames of central correction. Interpretative fallacy, which means that the scientific evidence, common sense, use are main reasons or supplementary explanation are wrong. Logic fallacy means that the core logic between the evidence and the conclusion doesn't exist, or the logic of the argument itself is wrong. Accusing the emotional abuse is the most commonly used frame of peripheral frames. Most news media in Chinese have assumed social responsibility and give public behavior suggestions for the possible demand caused by health misinformation. Among the specific behavior suggestions, change behavior is a more common recommendation adopted in news articles. Secondly, give reminders or warnings is another behavioral suggestion that the news media is good at adopting, reminding and warning people to beware of the possible harm caused by non-authoritative experts or false information. Further analyzing, there is a significant connection between proposed behaviors and divergent subjects of HMI. The last part is our conclusion and discussion. In this research, we found that firstly, this dissemination of health misinformation is still a severe problem in China. Food curation, food safety, disease treatment, and health care are the most common health misinformation themes. Secondly, in the correction of information source, the suggestions of scientific research institutions, of pundits, medical institutions, or medical professions are generally persuasive to the public due to its authority. Thirdly, according to the attribution of health misinformation, this study examines the widespread health misinformation closely related to the lack of personal health literacy. Fourthly, from the perspective of news reporting frames, health misinformation adopt the scientific and knowledge frame. Lastly, readings are expected more or less to gain practical advice from newspaper. That's all of our presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jiang Yang and Shibo Shao for their presentation on the reports of health misinformation in Chinese newspaper, a warring landscape of health communication. We know the pandemic turns into infodemic in this digital era. And misinformation, disinformation, rumor, works, and false information is spreading on social media and other digital platforms. So it is very important issues that the Sibosao and Yang Yang presented here. Thank you for your presentation. Thanks. Please close down your paper. And the next presenter is Dr. Sangeeta Unithan, a researcher, Department of Communication and Journalism, University of Kerala. Her presentation is the mass media engagement of frontline health workers in Kerala during the COVID-19 pandemic. Please start your.
Thank you, sir. Respected moderator, Professor Muhammadul Haq, respected participants. First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to present at this prestigious conference. I would like to share my screen. I hope it is visible.
Yeah.
Okay. So the title of my paper is Mass Media Engagement of Health Experts and Frontline Health Workers in Kerala during the COVID-19 pandemic. I have done this paper with the guidance of Dr. M.S. Harikumar and Professor Dr. J.D. Vilanilam, who are my supervisors.
Please enlarge your screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it clear now?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, fine. All right. So Kerala was in fact the first state in India to report COVID-19 on January 30, 2020. The first patient was a medical student from Wuhan University who had returned to Kerala following the pandemic outbreak in China. 2 more medical students from Wuhan who returned to Kerala tested positive for COVID-19 in the following days. But as soon as the first case was reported, and even before the rest of the country woke up to the pandemic, Kerala launched a massive contingency plan to combat the pandemic. This involved stringent quarantine, intense contact tracing, and setting up of a corona war room to begin with. By the time India went into a nationwide lockdown on March 24th, Kerala had launched a full-fledged COVID-19 response plan. The state government had already declared a health emergency. There was rigorous testing, especially at all transit points like airports and state borders, longer quarantine, strengthening of frontline health workers network, setting up of dedicated hospitals for COVID treatment, constitution of state and district medical boards to devise and implement treatment protocols, and regular press briefings by Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan. Kerala had took up some unique initiatives upholding its welfare state model, like building thousands of shelters for migrant workers who were stranded by the sudden nationwide lockdown. Kerala also built COVID care centers to accommodate non-residents such as tourists, people in transit, etc. Telemedicine portal called e-Sanjeevani was launched across the state. Community kitchen initiative to provide free meals to those in institutional quarantine as well as the destitute. Besides this, the state's early COVID awareness campaign called Break the Chain, which was widely promoted, was also widely accepted by the general public. The Kerala model of combating COVID-19 pandemic was discussed and applauded internationally. Even when the rest of India was gasping for breath during the agonizing second wave, the state of Kerala was able to rein in the deadly virus, keeping death toll in control and recording the highest recovery rate in India. Kerala's then Health Minister, K.K. Shailaja, was globally praised for her leadership, earning her rare recognitions like a UN honor and profile on Vogue magazine and the Guardian newspaper. Now, Kerala's COVID strategy rides largely on the back of its robust network of frontline workers who continue to remain the backbone of this exhausting fight against the unrelenting COVID-19 pandemic. But this is not really a pandemic response outcome. Kerala has always had a strong public health system, and Kerala's well-trained health professionals, especially doctors and nurses, are much sought after all around the world. In fact, they say that you will not find even a single hospital anywhere in the world where there is at least not one Malayali or a Keralite nurse. Kerala's public health indicators have also been historically on par with that of developed nations, as my fellow researcher had pointed out in her paper earlier. This is a far cry from the general public health indicators of India. One of the major reasons for this is the highly aware and literate public in Kerala. Kerala has one of the highest literacy rates in the country, around 96.2%. The state enjoys the highest life expectancy in India, and its infant mortality and maternal mortality rates are significantly lower than the national average. Kerala also boasts of a very high immunization coverage among children. Kerala's health indicators are a major contributor to the state's development model, which is globally touted as the Kerala model. The Kerala model of development has been well studied and recorded by historians, economists, and researchers all around the world since 1970s. Now, thanks to the highly literate and politically aware, conscious population of the state, the media in Kerala have always enjoyed high readership and viewership. In fact, the state has the highest media exposure in India. The state's leading vernacular newspaper, Malayalam Manorama, is in fact the 14th most circulated newspaper in the whole world. Apart from Malayalam media, Keralites are also very well exposed to media in other languages, particularly English language media, which also enjoy high level of circulation among the Kerala audience. Now, the objective of this particular study is to try to understand the coverage of COVID-19 pandemic by the mainstream media in Kerala from the point of view of health experts and frontline health workers. The paper seeks to probe how the frontline workers and health experts engaged with the media during the pandemic. As the high-risk category population during a pandemic, their media consumption patterns and informed view can provide valuable insights and pandemic mass communication and best practices. The methodology adopted for this study is structured interviews. As many as 12 health workers, including 6 health experts and 6 frontline workers, were interviewed for this paper. The health experts interviewed were an assistant surgeon at the state COVID control room, state epidemiologist, state nodal officer of SHWAS program, which is the state government respiratory disease control program, state nodal officer for call centers, senior research officer of state health resource center, and state COVID war room senior consultant. 6 frontline workers interviewed included 2 junior public health nurses, 1 community health nurse, 1 junior health inspector, and an ASHA worker. The interviewees were asked 6 questions to be answered on a scale ranging from strongly agree to strongly disagree, with the medium response being neutral. All questions pertain to media's coverage of COVID-19 pandemic. And one thing to be mentioned here is that the definition of mainstream media was given as news media, which included both digital media as well as conventional media. Now, looking at the results of this interview, the first question pertained to media's crucial educative and informative role during the pandemic. All participants agreed that most of the mainstream media in Kerala played a critical role in educating the public on the pandemic and in creating public awareness on pandemic best practices. 8 out of 12 frontline workers interviewed strongly agreed that the mainstream news media played a critical educative and informative role during the pandemic. The second question pertained to media's role in highlighting the state of public health in Kerala. As many as 7 participants, that is 58.3%, agreed that the mainstream news media in Kerala had been successful in highlighting the lacunae in public health system in Kerala. The third question pertained to pandemic politics, like how did media deal with the political aspects of the pandemic. The interview participants were most divided on the question related to politicization of pandemic coverage. 7 out of 12 participants believed that the media overly politicized the pandemic, with 2 of them strongly agreeing to it. The remaining 5 participants disagreed to the statement. The next question was with regard to mass media's role in tackling misinformation, the mainstream media's role in tackling misinformation. Majority of the interviewed frontline workers agreed that the mainstream news media were successful in tackling misinformation related to the pandemic perpetuated by other sources. In fact, 25% of the interviewees strongly agreed to the statement. The next question was related to fear mongering. Majority of the interviewees held a positive view on the general pandemic coverage by the media. 10 out of 12 interviewed frontline workers did not feel that the mainstream media coverage resulted in any exaggerated or negative coverage that led to any kind of fear mongering. However, one of the participants strongly felt that the mainstream media did indeed cause fear mongering and anxiety among the public. Another participant held a neutral view about this. The 6th question was with regard to the general attitude of the media towards the coverage of COVID-19 pandemic in Kerala. We should say that majority of the interviewees, that is 10 out of 12 interviewees, felt that the mainstream news media in Kerala had in general acted responsibly in covering the COVID-19 pandemic. 1 participant disagreed to the statement, while another had a neutral view. Now, coming to the wrap up of this whole study, I should point out that the researcher Sharon Dunwoody, in her article Science Journalism in 2008, had pointed out that most citizens who have completed their formal education continue to learn about science, chiefly from the mass media. Media are the most potent weapon that can be used to enhance public understanding of science, especially in the modern world where science is ubiquitous in all spheres of life. Mass media's critical and unique role in science communication, public understanding of science is well studied and established. During an emergency situation like a pandemic, the media's responsibility as science communicators and primary information centers gains all the more importance. In the current COVID-19 crisis, media can, in fact, play a life-saving role by disseminating, promoting, and inculcating best practices among the public, right from maintaining hygiene to getting vaccinated. This is something that Professor Muhammadul had earlier referred to. This short study done among health experts and frontline health workers in Kerala shows that the mainstream news media in the state has largely acted responsibly in their coverage of the pandemic. The interviewees agreed that the mainstream media played a critical role in educating the public, highlighting shortfalls, and tackling misinformation. Majority of the participants also agreed that the media coverage was politicized. However, they did not believe that the mainstream media overly exaggerated or indulged in fear-mongering. Overall, from the point of view of health experts and frontline workers in Kerala, the media strengthened the fight against the pandemic by effectively playing the critical role of information conduits between the public and health workers, as well as between the state and its stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shangita, for your scientific presentation. You did wonderful jobs and presented mass media engagement of frontline health workers in Kerala during this pandemic. Actually, it's the science communication you already mentioned. Because pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic information is the scientific information, and the communication, scientific communication actually make it understandable and aware the people with proper communication. And the media's role is here is massive to make the scientific information turns the information is understandable. So science communications plays important role during this pandemic to fight this deadly disease. So thank you, Sangeeta, for your presentation. And next presenters is Dr. Jaya Surjay, the tutor Makhanal Chaturvedi, National University of Journalism and Communication. It's maybe in India.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the paper is also the study of healthcare professionals' mobile applications in COVID times. In another paper, maybe has its roles to fight pandemic. Thank you. Start your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you so much. And thank you, AMIC, for allowing me to present my paper. It's in initial stages. I have bifurcated in many more papers to this. So this is study of healthcare professionals' mobile applications in COVID times. Am I audible and my screen is visible? Please.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this was paper done by my colleague, Dr. Aarti Sarang, but she was not there for the presentation. So due to the changing landscape of social behavior because of this pandemic, majority of people have been refraining to go to the hospitals. And there has been a lot of panic and hysteria when it came to the visiting of doctors, especially during the lockdown. And we often stopped ourselves out of fear that we, or worse, a loved one might get infected with the deadly coronavirus. But there were certain issues that you cannot ignore, and that's where you require doctors' advice the most. So we were dependent on the technology, and Google and iOS and other softwares had a lot of apps available to us. But apps were on a very different platform. Healthcare professionals apps had like apps for exercising, apps for consultations, apps for buying medicines. So there were numerous understandings with the respondents. So this paper was trying to figure out to investigate the preference criteria of usage of these apps by working professionals. And it tries to identify the elements of preference considered as the most important criteria for selecting a doctor, whether they were using apps or not, or whether they were only consulting on the telephone, or whether they were trying to go and visit a doctor at a hospital or a personal clinic. So the methodology adopted research is exploratory and trying to figure out, expose the various variables for choosing a health consultation app and the doctors through it. The random sample of population helps to gather the usage pattern for health consultation mobile applications. So majorly what was found as a healthcare app was considered to be Arogya Setu. Only few other people were aware of the other apps, specially devised for your consultations. And the consultation apps emerged to be Practo and Apollo in Bhopal city. This was only restricted study in Bhopal with the working professionals. And the working professionals, the data was like physical consultation during illness was priority of 44% respondents. And out of those, only 70% of them were like visiting the hospitals earlier to the pandemic and after that. And 14% chose phone call for consultation. And more than half of the respondents preferred online consultation when expert was from other cities. But after lockdown stopped, this sample preferred physical consultation and they chose the app that their doctors advised. And information of the app was provided to the respondents from promotional messages sent by the doctors only. The choice of healthcare apps was like subscription mode was free. Then only they were installing that particular app. Otherwise, they were booking online only website. Okay. Around 10% appointments and consultation were booked through the websites. And the booking of an appointment through the app and website was found hassle-free and user-friendly for the respondents who have used it. And the gateway also, the payment gateway, they were using the respondents who were actually using the apps was found to be reliable, secure, and fraud-free. The apps like that of hospitals gave a detailed understanding of the doctor's expertise and their appointments on video was seen user-friendly. And the video consultation in lockdown was a great step, they thought was a great step for consulting during their illnesses. And some of the other findings also that were not mentioned here, like the doctor's choice dependent was on rate. First was ratings of the app. Second was years of experience and hospital they were considering associated with and the payment options available to them. And the kind of fourth was their appointment timing was convenient because again working professionals look for the app that gives a convenient consultation time. And this study was actually done to understand that how mobile applications are infused in our society. So diffusion of innovation is found to be at very early stage, and early adoption was only done by the people, only by the respondents who were like asking their doctors and how to choose a doctor from other city. Only local doctors advise them to consult to the outstation doctors. And the study was like also could be taken up further to understand the challenges faced by the health apps, doctors, and hospitals. And the study will be extended to differentiate the various health issues for which one must go in for additional expert opinion through the applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh Hojani, for your nice presentation on the study of healthcare professionals' mobile application in fighting COVID-19. And this is your study on the mobile application. I think these apps now can be used as a tools in fighting COVID-19, not only in COVID-19, in all other health well-being and health promotion. So now is globally it is used widely to disseminate health messages, health informations, to change knowledge, attitude, and behaviors for the target people, and its specialized function, and it has specialized role to disseminate health information. Thank you for your presentation, Yashudani. And the next presenter, please cross. I welcome to for your presentation, Carmen Lai Jai Wang, lecturer, Health University, Malaysia. The presentation is the mindfulness practices for science communication. Oh, sorry, online Tibetan vowel sound as mindfulness practices for science communication with the university students. Effects on attention, anxiety, and well-being. Please start your presentation.
Yes, thank you. Can you see my slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Please enlarge your PowerPoint. Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carmen Lai, and I am a lecturer with Hub University in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I'm happy to share with you my proposed research topic, online Tibetan bowl sound as mindfulness training and its effect on attention, anxiety, and well-being among university students.
Hi, ma'am.
In this
Excuse me.
presentation,
I think you're showing us your script.
sorry. Can you see the slide now? Can I start again? Can I confirm that you are seeing my slide, please?
Yes, ma'am. We're seeing it.
Please enlarge.
Currently, we see all 16 slides, ma'am.
Please go back and start.
Can you see the slide now? Sorry. The thing is that I need my notes.
No. Yes, please start.
Can you see
From
the slide now?
Start from the first slide.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carmen Lai, and I'm a lecturer with Hub University in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I'm happy to share with you my research topic, online Tibetan bowl sound as mindfulness training and its effect on attention, anxiety, well-being among university students. In this presentation, I'm going to talk a bit about the background so that you understand my research topics. Next, I will talk about the research design so that you understand how I will approach the issues of this research, and then the methodology followed by limitations and conclusions. Now, for the background information, firstly, I focus on defining mindfulness and mindfulness research. The Buddha taught mindfulness as a way of self-transformation through self-observation. So traditionally, mindfulness is about being in the present moment and not getting distracted from the thoughts and emotions that arise from the present situation. Since its inception in Western science, mindfulness has become synonymous with improving well-being and psychological health. Modern psychology defines mindfulness as the ability to control our attention while maintaining an open, curious, and accepting attitude. It also describes the non-meditative state in which we lay aside our mental distractions to focus more on the present moment. As you can see, there are similarities between traditional and contemporary definitions here. More importantly, mindfulness as consciousness science means awareness, attention, and presence of mind can be cultivated and trained. In the last 40 years, various studies have shown that mindfulness trainings help to enhance intention, attention, and positive attitudes that can promote resilience and well-being, decrease mind wandering, lower anxiety, as well as improve psychological functioning and reduce stress, to name a few. In Malaysia, particularly, a study reported that medical students who In Malaysia, particularly, a study reported that medical students who participated in brief meditation programs have shown significant improvement in anxiety, depression, and mental symptoms. Meanwhile, multiple studies also found that mindfulness training
Apologies, but I'm seeing like a lot of slides, but I cannot read.
It's now okay. You can continue. It's okay now. Okay.
Meanwhile, multiple studies have found that mindfulness training can benefit students' academic achievements. For instance, students can become more engaged in their studies. They focus better on single tasks and they start staying better attention by being less distracted, among others. Even brief mindfulness activities, for example, 20 minutes per day for 3 days, have proven sufficient to improve mood, disorientation, fatigue, and depression among young people. So we can say that engaging in mindfulness activities can bring many benefits for university students. And secondly, I will stress on the importance of managing university students' well-being. A 2019 American poll found factors influencing students' poor academic performances to be stress 32%, anxiety 26%, sleep disorder 22%, and depression 20%. In the Malaysian context, a 2018 national survey reported 1 in 5 Malaysians are suffering depression. 2 in 5 anxiety and 1 in 10 stresses among young Malaysians. So as we can see, so many young people are critically suffering from mental problems even before the pandemic. So I choose university students to participate in this study for two reasons. Firstly, university students' well-being is an increasing concern. And second, obviously, is for convenient, purposive sampling. And thirdly, I will talk a bit about sound meditation. Specifically, sound meditation is a form of mindfulness training that entails focusing our attention on a series of repetitive sounds. In this case, using online Tibetan singing bowls. When listening to virtual sessions, it is a simple method to experience such sound meditation. It is a holistic, low-cost, and non-invasive stress management technique with few, if any, side effects. Next, I summarize the research problem. According to many studies, university students increasingly report higher stress, lower motivation, mental fatigue, and dissatisfaction with their learning experience. For these students, such symptoms have several detrimental effects, including issues with cognitive functioning and poor academic achievement. Therefore, I am pursuing this research because healing sound meditation for mindfulness training while retaining focused attention and performing cognitive tasks among university students is currently lacking in Malaysia. So, my research aims to understand the subjective experience of a group of undergraduate students taking part in mindfulness training using online Tibetan singing bowl music with 5 to 8 Hz, so GBEL frequency. I want to find out if listening to high intensity, low frequency meditative sounds when students work on their computers might produce profound attention and relaxation response as well as improved well-being. This study will verify the proposition that students experience higher well-being after rather than before participating in this mindfulness training. My study will answer two questions. First question is, how do the students describe their experiences with this online sound meditation? What are their motivations, attitudes, and effects on attention? And the second question is, does online sound meditation help students cultivate mindfulness in daily life? If yes, how? I will now talk about the research model. This research hopes to reveal several themes about the students' motivations, attitudes, and self-regulated awareness, as well as the effect on their overall anxiety, attention, and well-being after they participate in this online mindfulness training. I will now briefly explain the research design. On the sound meditation protocol, the students will participate in an 8-week self-administered mindfulness training using a single online Tibetan bowls music video. It takes 71 minutes to complete one cycle of this sound meditation on YouTube. While there is no limit to the number of cycles the students can play the music, a good place to start is daily one cycle of sound meditation in 5 days a week. They will utilize opportunities when working on their computers or laptops, either accomplishing tasks, writing essays, or researching. This mindfulness training requires students to become aware of sounds without judging or evaluating it. Next, before, during, and after the training, the students will fill out a demographic questionnaire, keep reflective journals, and self-reported assessments. Then the student will be interviewed individually. There will be no control group or a highly disciplined form of meditation practice involved in this study. I will use qualitative research to examine the topic. Specifically, I will collect data using hermeneutic interviews. As a research strategy, hermeneutic is very useful to examining the meanings students ascribe to their experiences in this mindfulness training. I hope to get 20 to 30 volunteer students whom will be recruited through the Help University Students Body. The limitation of this study I foresee will be students may drop out of training or not returning data. This study wants to learn more about the benefits of practicing mindfulness using online sound meditation among university students scheduled to start in early 2022. Thereafter, this research will suggest best practices for such mindfulness training and perhaps identify a mindfulness concept. Finally, this study and more future research can serve as science communication to influence skeptics and education authorities of mindfulness training and its ability to promote attention, reverse anxiety, and increase well-being among the university students. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Doctor, and thank you, AMIC.
Thank you, Carmen Lai, for your nice presentation. Actually, meditation is communication, and meditation is an interpersonal communication. It can reduce anxiety, mental trauma. This is another mechanism to reduce trauma, to reduce anxiety using meditation. Thank you for your presentation. And the next presenters are Lin Jo, Senior Research Assistant, Hong Kong University. Hong Kong University is will present communicating genetically modified food safety, the role of debunking source on message effectiveness in Hong Kong. Please start. Enlarge your presentation, please.
Thank you, sir. Can everyone see my slides clearly?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I'm Lin. I'm a senior research assistant from Baptist University in Hong Kong. And actually, I work as an assistant editor in the BU Fact Check Service. So, and Stephanie is the director of our Fact Check Center. So, as you can see that actually the topic is inspired by our fact checking practice on a daily basis. And we would like to test how the role of debunking source on message effectiveness in Hong Kong. As a context that in Hong Kong in recent years, as you know, the complicated cultural, political, and some social issues that the local fact-checking practice is developing rapidly currently years. But there are different aspects, like the government, they maybe have their own debunking message platform to deliver such fact-checking contents, and some professional journalists, they will establish their own platforms to deliver this similar content. And like some academic institution like our HKBU, like the Hong Kong University, we also run our independent fact-checking service in the society to help to overcome the question that caused by the fake news. And on the other hand, increased efforts to this kind of fact-checking message pay more and more attention on some science-related message. Currently, as you know, that people may be heard about this kind of scientific messages frequently, but actually they do not have a very specific understanding and good understanding on like the mechanism and what kind of the products, including what kind of technology. So the majority of Hong Kongers actually is not that familiar with the GM foods that we would like to look at this topic. When it comes to the debunking message, we are always thinking about what should be effective debunking messages. And from our previous experience, we think that a good debunking content should deliver the message without generating any misperception exactly. And we need to help our readers to form an accurate perceptions to understand a particular topic. But in the practice, we found that the aspect in terms of the source and debunking message, whether the poster is a professional journalist or whether the poster is an academic institution, really makes sense to the response that we have monitored across the platforms. And on the other hand, the social information help our readers to perceive the reach of the contents also makes sense, like the numbers of likes, the numbers of shares, and the numbers of comments. So in this research, we would like to test whether these two aspects really makes a difference towards the effectiveness of the debunking messages, and therefore in turn will have some impacts on the audience's willingness to purchase and consume GM foods. Yes, so therefore the research question is mainly focused on the message, on the impact that caused by the message in source and message reach towards the safety perception from our audiences and their intention to purchase GM foods. We also test the mediation and the combined effectiveness that caused by the message source and the message reach on the effectiveness. An online experiment during October 2021 is conducted with the support of a local data company. We run this experiment involved 410 participants with the average age is 21 and half and half distribution of the gender. The majority of our participants obtained an education degree after post-secondary, and an average individual income ranged from 30,000 to 39,000 per month, which is slightly higher than the current Hong Kong average individual income. In this research, we conducted a 2x2 experimental design. So we got 4 groups of participants here to randomly distributed into the reach groups and the source groups. In this experiment, we will show our participants a stimuli, which is following the routine structure of our fact-checking content that users can frequently see on the Hong Kong Facebook platforms. Here in the user's name, audiences can figure out where is the sources who post this, and we will also have a very brief introduction of these organizations. Here, we will tell our participants whether it's a professional journalist or whether it's like academic institution. The content here is fact-checking reports, abstracts. Here we can see the verdict, and the claim is that genetically modified green groceries will cause cancer, and it could not be a choice of the food for people. And in the fact-checking content, we quoted a report from US FDA demonstrating that the foods from GM plants cannot have not been more likely to increase cancer risk, which means it is safe. It's as safe as some traditional bread plants. And the verdict is also emphasized here as false. In the image of this Facebook, you can see that the verdict is highlighted here with the claim, and also show the original evidence from FDA. Also, as a normal Facebook post, we will show the number of reach here, including the number of emotion, the number of comments and shares. So people can perceive that how many people or how many audiences that this post have reached before they get exposed to this content. And the stimuli is separated in terms of the reach. We have a low reach, which only gained several reactions, and there are another post gaining more than 1,000 reactions from audiences under the same posters. And here we also provided 2 academic posters and 3 professional journalist posters. Here you can see that the AMIC lab is actually established by Hong Kong University, and under the professional journalists, Feature Lab, Fairwire Fact Check, and FB are also operated by some professional reporters. The number of the participants are relatively equal in each groups. Here we have higher journalists because we provided 3 in journalist posters, and we just provided 2 for academic groups. The core measures that we test after people get exposed to the stimulus is the safety perception and the intention to purchase GM foods. Safety perception mainly cover the question that testing whether our audiences think the GM foods is safe and if it can be consumed as a daily food as other traditionally bred groceries. And as for the intention for purchase GM foods, we not only test if they will buy this kind of food for themselves, we also test if they will buy this kind of foods to people around them. So I think it's a very solid measures for these items. In the finding, we found that you can see that in terms of the high reach, it's generally works better than the low reach, which is more obvious. When it comes to the academics posters, because the differences between the high reach and low reach groups are not that obvious difference. And secondly, okay, just remember the features that we shown in the finding 1. We can see the feature is really similar when it comes to the intention of purchasing behavior. When we mediate these 2 items together, we can find the difference is still very obvious in the impact on intention to buy and consume GM foods. So we can generally generate the third findings that the perceived message reach really have a positive impact on the safety perception, which will finally lead to a higher intention to purchase and recommend this kind of GM foods. So we can see that a higher perceived reach really have a positive effectiveness, but this kind of effectiveness is very intense only in the academic source instead of the professional journalist aspects. And in general, a message of reach, such as the engagement that you can see from a Facebook post, really makes our fact-checking content more effectively and more powerful to persuade people towards some kind of behavior. So from this kind of research, we can see that for fact-checking organization, it's also important for them to have a very powerful and solid fan space and to share their contents. Because when people found that there are more people had read this kind of content, people will perceive a higher safety and a higher credibility that in their mind. So yes, for our fact checking, maybe some of the fact checking organizations in Hong Kong nowadays is they didn't pay much attention on the fans growing, but actually this is also an essential aspect for their operation. And last but not least is a promotion of the centers for English channels. Maybe you can follow our LinkedIn and Twitter platforms, and for Chinese channels, you can just follow our Instagram and Facebook channels. Actually, we would like to hear from your perspectives if you have any thinking, any consideration on the fake news, on the fact checking, on the misinformation, because it's nowadays very hot topics in the field. So welcome to contact us if you have any perception would like to share. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lijo, for your nice presentation and investigating the role of debunk message source on message effectiveness in Hong Kong. And
Professor, I think you're muted.
oh, sorry, thank you, Lijo, for your presentation and investigating the role of debunk source on message effectiveness in Hong Kong. And I'd like to invite the next presenters, Tianjin Gao and Chanwan Song. Two presenters jointly present their papers. One, Tianjin Gao is a professor of School of Journalism, Communication, University of China, and Song is the master's student of that university. Please, and their presentation is the journey of vaccination, an analysis of the health communication of immunization practices in the Light Qing dynasty and the Republic of China. Please start the presentation.
Okay.
Yang Shang will present this paper.
好，我们看不到自己是吧
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
I hope everyone can see our screens.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. We are very happy to have the chance to present our research, a historical record of the COVID-19 on the 28th AMIC annual conference. So the idea of researching on the journey of vaccination all comes from the fact that there is the general impression that Chinese people are very keen to get vaccinated. Very different from other countries who a lot of different ideas, different scientific understanding of the vaccination are very popular in other parts of the world. So now the vaccination rates in China is very high, and we're in the process of a third booster vaccination. So we start all our study of asking the question, why are the Chinese people keen to get vaccinated, or why they, or we can say why they trust science so much. So it all started from this basic question. And so what we are now going to do is that with my co-author, also my students, first she is going to give a record of the history, the basic history of vaccination, which is very interesting because the most popular spread, most popular used vaccination, the smallpox vaccination, which was invented in England, actually was originated from China, which is called variolation. So these are the two keywords we are going to use during the presentation. So my student, Ms. Song, is going to give a very brief history of the process, how variolation was transmitted to other parts of the world, and which was reinvented into the smallpox vaccination, which spread all around the world, saved thousands, millions of lives, and it also came back to China. So we want to give a very brief record of history, how it came back to China and how we interact with the smallpox vaccination. Then I'm going to come back again to discuss a little bit about our conclusion.
Okay. Actually, say there was no smallpox in traditional China. In the 17th year of Jianwu, it was introduced to China by prisoners of war. the severe infectious disease not only caused the pandemic and the large number of casualties, but also brought a radical change in Chinese medicine culture, the invitation of variolation. Variolation change in China. Variolation organized from the epochs in this way. Before the establishment of the Qing dynasty, the Manchus who lived in the northeastern China, before were really troubled by the smallpox, and most of them didn't have immunity to the smallpox. After arriving in Beijing, compared with other dynasties, the Qing government was more afraid of the smallpox and paid more attention to its prevention. For example, the Qing dynasty set an official position and called Chadou Zhangjing to be responsible for the isolation and prevention for the smallpox, and institutionalized prevention of the infectious disease began to sprout. Then the government of Qing dynasty gradually penetrated the process of smallpox prevention and the spread of variolation. Ancient China's early vaccination practices have already had the ideological significance of the public health system. However, this historical process was interrupted and forgotten by the invention of Western powers, and its significance in the history of human public health is really mentioned in the writing of modern Western public health history. In the process of vaccination of ancient China, the technique of variolation was generally learned by doctors from all over the world. It has transformed from a regional traditional Chinese medicine technology into a global epidemic prevention knowledge, and directly inspired the British doctor to invent the world's first modern vaccine, pox vaccination. At the same time, the local Chinese variolation technology was very material. Its success rate could reach more than 95%. So Chinese didn't want to change this method. In order to popularize pox vaccination, the printing media became a new way to promote this technology. Pearson, a surgeon at the East India Company, wrote a brochure about vaccinia techniques, which was later translated into Chinese by Standen, called Chinese Treatise on the Vaccine. A lot of scholars have reached an academic consensus that is, they believe this book had been lost in China and it is difficult to read its true content. However, we found that nearly 50 years after the first publication of this book, its content was published in the earliest Chinese newspaper in 1995, called The Medical Vaccination Techniques in Europe.
So it's a very brief history talking about how variolation as a traditional Chinese vaccination technique, which was transmitted to Europe, reinvented into smallpox vaccination and came back to China. At the time, because the variolation technique is very mature, so the success rate is as high as 95 to 99%. So actually, Chinese people are very much against using the new technique of smallpox vaccination. But of course, in comparison of these two vaccination, the smallpox vaccination, which was widely used by the whole world, is advanced in a sense that you have light symptoms of immune reaction to the vaccination. So it's a better vaccinia. So with the contribution of all the newspapers and mass communication, actually in the end, not only smallpox vaccination came to China successfully, but also it merged with our modern history. If you know a little bit about Chinese modern history, that we were invaded by foreign powers since 1840. So from 1840 to the building of the communist China until 1949. So this is 100 years of invasion, colonialism, and a lot of turbulence in our history. So vaccination coming to China in this period of history was combined with all this historical context. So we think or we promote vaccination in the sense that vaccination is going to bring a rich and healthy China that we can defend ourselves. So vaccination itself, instead of being a single or independent medical issue, it became a social issue, and it conveyed the value that vaccination benefits all our society, and it has a very strong public connotations. So to conclude, with the contribution of all these newspapers talking about vaccination and its benefits to China as a whole, actually we accumulated a source or an idea on modern public health or public vaccination. So this contributes to the historiography of writing of public health history in China, because in the academic record of Chinese public history, public medical history, or public health history, we think 1901, the year of 1901 is starting point of Chinese public health history, because in that year, the Qing dynasty or Qing government built up an establishment, an office to prevent another pandemic. But through the history record or study of the history of smallpox vaccination, we think we can contribute to historical writing of public health history by providing a preparation of thoughts, modern thoughts or modern ideas on public health much earlier than 1901. So that's one of our conclusions. The second conclusion is that with a little bit add up of the history, after People's Republic of China was built, we first promoted the 4-year-long vaccination campaign, which provided 500 million people with vaccination. And in 1960, in the year of 1960, the last smallpox patient in China was cured. But as you all know, in 1979, so 19 years later, the United Nations announced the elimination of smallpox globally. So thinking a new grounded communist China to eliminate smallpox within 10 years, almost 20 years earlier than the United Nations. So I think it's a great accomplishment. So if we come back to our starting point, why do the Chinese people want to get vaccinated, or they trust the reason and trust science so much? I think we found out that we don't have a good answer to this question, because with all the history study, we think it has never been a personal problem. It has always been a public problem. So maybe we should change our question from asking why do the Chinese people like to be vaccinated into another question, that there's a why in other parts of the world vaccination, which affects immediately the group, the people around you, is immediately or totally a public issue, became a private issue, became a personal freedom issue. So you can say, my body is in charge of me. I should be the person who has the last say about my body. So it's a reflection on our study of the record of the history is one part of that. But on the other hand, when we reflect on the question, maybe it's not the question that why the Chinese people want to be vaccinated so much, but it's the question why the anti-science, the anti-reason became a popular culture that prevents us from herd immune, which is so much important for to stop the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's our basic presentation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Professor P. Jinko and Yuang Song, for presenting the historical perspective of vaccination. I don't know if there was any vaccine phobia in your country regarding the
Sorry, Professor. I think your internet connection is cutting up.
I don't know that sense.
All right, we can hear you now, Professor. Yeah.
Yeah, the vaccine phobia. I was talking about the vaccine phobia. Is there any vaccine phobia in your country regarding the COVID-19?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Very briefly, I know we don't have much time. There are different thoughts, but the vaccine phobia never exists in any media, public media. So it never became a really popular thought. There are personal thoughts on that, but if you see the vaccination rate, which is very high, I would say it's almost non-existence.
Almost not existence. Thank you for your nice presentation.
Thank you.
And the journey of vaccination. And the next presenter, I'd like to invite the next presenters, Jiang Yang and Yaping Zhao. Jiang Yang is a graduate student and Yaping Zhao is a PhD candidate, both from the School of Journalism and Communication, One University. Their presentation is the picture of tobacco control publicity in China, content attributes and persuasive strategies of tobacco control. Please.
Okay. Good afternoon. Because the other presentators could not be here today, so it's still me to show our paper on their behalf. The other co-workers with me are Shi Wenwu, Xiaping Zhou from Ohio University and Xia Zheng from Indiana University. And the first part is introduction. As tobacco use brings serious harm to the individuals and social, tobacco control has become a global issue. China is the largest tobacco producer and consumer in the world. There are more than 300 million smokers, accounting for almost 1/3 of its total in the world. Tobacco use has become an increasingly serious health problem in China. Tobacco use can produce risk factors that cause disease in almost all human organs. However, in China, most of the public still lack awareness of its hazard, and there are widespread misunderstanding about smoking. In tobacco control efforts, publicity is still considered to be an important measure to improve individual awareness of its hazard of tobacco and promote changes in behaviors. Nowadays, Chinese government has invested a lot in supporting tobacco control publicity, but the result seems unsatisfactory. Also, many scholars have focused on exploring the persuasive effects of different forms of publicity strategies in Chinese tobacco control. However, we lack a systematic understanding of the content attributes of tobacco control publicity in China. The second part is our theoretical reviews and research questions. First, we review the visual advantages of tobacco control publicity pictures. We've learned that compared with text interventions, images has advantages in influencing the emotion and cognition of risk awareness, resulting in individual behaviors. And nowadays, Whether picture or videos, images are increasingly used in the change of health behavior. The use of visual elements is not only a part of artistic expression, but also a potential persuasive element and a part of persuasive strategy. So we put forward our first research question. What are the contents and themes of tobacco control publicity pictures in China? Then we review the researchers in information design of tobacco control publicity pictures. As theories and models can explain behavior and provide past suggestions of realizing behavior change, perceived behavior control, rational behavior, planned behavior theory, and health behavior model is considered to be the most cited by scholars, widely recognized, and most representative and promoting theory in the field of health behavior and education. As a result, we comprehensively use the above three theoretical models to analyze the content of tobacco control publicity pictures in China. So as to understand what strategies have been used, what strategies has been overused, and what has not been used or missing in China's tobacco control campaign. The next part is our research design. In this paper, the content attributes and persuasive strategies of publicity pictures of tobacco control in China are studied by using the method of content analysis. A total of 565 tobacco control publicity pictures from 2007 to 2018 were analyzed. There are two parts of the coding design, which are presentation of the specific information and persuasion strategy. And the next part is the content presentation of tobacco control publicity picture in China. From the content of the selected presentation, the picture content is too focused on the presentation of three information categories: health hazard, slogan smoking, cessation publicity, and secondhand smoking, of which the presentation of the secondhand smoke also refers to the aspects related to health hazards. Therefore, from a macro point of view, the information vision of China's tobacco control publicity pictures is too narrowed and limited to health hazard and publicity slogan. The use of these two dimensions appeared earlier in history of tobacco control movement has been used for a long time. It can be considered that the content selection of China's tobacco control publicity pictures still stay at the traditional thinking level, showing the stereotyped thinking of tobacco control publicity. The information vision is very limited and the consideration of diversity is lacking. It further suggests that Chinese tobacco control publicity need to abandon the unitary, limited, and stereotype thinking and broaden the picture content and theme. Pay attention to narrow casting so that the picture can play a wider effectiveness. The fifth part is persuasion appeal of tobacco control publicity in China. Data analysis shows the cognitive strategy is the main persuasion strategy used in tobacco control publicity pictures in China, followed by knowledge strategies, but the use of behavior change strategy and emotion management strategy is obviously insufficient. Although China's tobacco control publicity picture pay more attention to the impact of the cognitive level of target group, there is an obvious perceived risk orientation within the strategy, which reflects the imbalance in the target group. In use of cognition strategy, however, it is difficult to focus only on the risk perception dimension to make the tobacco control publicity pictures adapt to a wide and more diverse audience, and the effectiveness is also limited. Therefore, in terms of the use of cognitive strategies, there are still many deficiencies in China's tobacco control map, which is worth reconsidering. The use of persuasion strategy in China's tobacco control publicity pictures can be simply summarized as relying on the influence of individual cognition and attitude by convening in the information of tobacco harm or the consequences of smoking, resulting in the change of individual behavior. However, this model seems logical, but it ignores many elements in the process of individual behavior change, such as self-efficiency or behavior cues, which can often play an important role in turning attitude into action. Therefore, it can be said that there are still great deficiencies in the use of behavior persuasion strategies in Chinese tobacco control publicity. The last part is our conclusion discussion. First, China's publicity picture should abandon the confinement of traditional thinking, exploring the types of picture information suitable for different groups and accept the new means of tobacco control will complement each other in the dissemination coverage, information applicability, and effectiveness of publicity pictures. Second, tobacco control intervention must not stop at the level of cognition and attitude, but need to go deeper and pay attention to the elements of behavior change. Third, although we can hope to cover all information in one picture, the combination of some information such as perceived risk and self-efficacy has gradually been considered by scholars to be more effective. Fourth, it is necessary to update the smoke control warning over time to avoid stagnation of its effectiveness. That's all of our presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Young, for your nice presentation on the picture of tobacco control publicity in China, content attribution and persuasion strategies of tobacco control. You mentioned two strategies. One is knowledge strategy and another is behavior strategies. Why the attitude strategies is left out from your study? The knowledge, attitude, and practice for tobacco control attitude, changing attitudes is very, very important. But you only mentioned two strategies in your presentation: knowledge strategies and behavior strategies. Why missing out the attitude changing attitude?
Sorry. There might be something wrong with the network. I haven't hear very clear.
Can you listen to me? Hello. Listen.
Hello, Professor.
In your presentation, you mentioned in two strategies: knowledge and behavior, but missing out the attitude. I'm talking about attitude. Why is missing out?
Okay.
Because attitude is also important to change behavior before any practices. The strategies, communication strategies, needs to follow to change the attitudes, to change knowledge, attitudes, and then practice or behavior.
Okay, I heard it that time. This time we lack the analysis of the people's attitude, and maybe we will reconsider it later. Thanks a lot, Professor.
Thank you for your presentation, and I'd like to invite. I'd like to invite Dr. Nia Sarinastiti, Associate Professor, Atma Jaya Catholic University of Indonesia. Her presentation title is storytelling about prevention and cure to create public awareness and understanding cases in Indonesia. Please start your presentation. Welcome.
Allow me to share my screen.
Yeah, share, please.
Thank you
It's
for the
okay.
opportunity. Okay, great. Thank you for the opportunity to present here at the 28th in the conference. And thank you again, Dr. Mahamudu for the introduction. My topic today is about storytelling on the prevention and cure to create public awareness and understanding cases in Indonesia. As we all know, Indonesia is also part of the country that has, in regards to the COVID-19, has been quite large as well, similar to perhaps India. And the background here, why I'm interested to develop this content is because there are too many messages and there is no single narration that the government has. No coherent information despite the call for orchestration. And a lot of experts have their own point of view, but they cannot tell a story. So they are too diverse, and which makes the public quite confused in regards to what they should, who they should listen to and why, because the government provides confusing messages, or I would say mixed messages. So I think because there is, what we see is there is a lack of a story. And in reality, we all love stories. How we use media, it's all about story, all the drama. You know, there is the K-drama, and then there's the telenovela. Indonesians love that, and they have mini series of different types of drama. So they actually understand if we do it through stories. The premise of the study is looking at storytelling, that it is an art of social sciences in which the science, I would say experts usually uses data more and highly dependent upon this data. So the proposed use of narrative as a communication tool will actually help the policymakers to be more effective in managing how they would communicate, based on a study by Gesher Aldersberg in 2021. So it's just recent. The objective of the study is to explore how government bodies see the importance of communicating prevention and cure to non-expert audience, whether the narratives provided are easier to comprehend, and whether audiences find them more engaging than traditional logical scientific communication. So what we did is a bit of an experiment that was done by different doctors. But first, I would like to inform the theory behind it is that storytelling does provide narrative when communicating science to non-expert audience, and that narratives offer increased comprehension, interest, and engagement, and that it needs to have message appeals, reasons versus sentiment that was brought up by Smith. So the approach of this is, of course, qualitative, and we use source triangulation, looking at the experiments that we did together with the doctors and scientists, 12 respondents of them, and then we did exploratory interviews to doctors and scientists who actually use narrative or stories in explaining about the various issues regarding COVID as well. And we did data mining from journals just as comparison to see whether it is similar results or not. Using the two models of Frentax's pyramid, which looks at how stories are developed from the exposition all the way to the climax and denouement, the moment of release, understanding about the content, and looking at how the narrative process was actually developed. We tried to figure out whether the understanding of, or just awareness of our audiences can be concluded. So the findings is that the storytelling, the government bodies and scientists do not have the same understanding of the context of developing storytelling. So there is no coherency. Extracting the main message to create the climax, as you can see in that in the pyramid, is that it's cumbersome because they want to go directly into the conclusion without providing the reasoning. And then for the narrative that they provided does not easily get the interest of the audience. Attention and engagement are mostly done using fear appeal messages. So that sense of developing, sense of being part or taking part of what they need to do is not really there because they're just afraid, and mostly are bought by hooks that are distributed through various means of communication. Well, the level of interest, impact, and the level of engagement is not as high because then, therefore, the comprehension is not as high either. In summary, awareness of issues are diverse despite efforts of intensive community interaction. So like the government has what they called a behavior change committee, trying to use various communication tools, including media, social media, neighborhood meetings, chat groups, and through social media. Because the community in Indonesia is quite diverse, and it's very spread out, and it's very difficult for some of the behavior change task force or committee to be able to converse with them directly. Understanding the context through narratives can be easier, but may still pose different impact due to the fact that the different layers of communities and understanding as well as culture is different as well. Therefore, in regards to the recommendation, we need to develop various messages appeals to different publics. It should be more of emotional appeal, rational appeal, rather than the fear appeal that they have provided. Further research that we would like to suggest is a comparison of using verbal narratives versus non-verbal narratives. Indonesians are quite known to be more on the visual side, literal in the visual side rather than the reading or text side of it, so using infographics and video. Comparisons of how scientists giving storytelling model versus learning on the storytelling as well. So there's still a wide research area that we can actually conduct in regards to how to change the behavior or even just the understanding of the communities in Indonesia. That's it from my side. Thank you very much for the opportunity again.
Thank you. Thank you, Nia Sharina Diti, for your nice presentation. Interesting issues of storytelling. Actually, storytelling is the communication approach to disseminate messages effectively. If you attract with proper storytelling, the knowledge, attitude, and behavior can be changed effectively. So storytelling is very important in health communication. How tell the story, how tell the information, how transform the information into messages with proper storytelling. So it is mostly important issues in health communication. Thank you for your nice presentation. And now I request to all panelists and participants to engaged in our question and answer sessions. You can raise questions, and the panelists, I request the panelists to answer it briefly and directly. Please, any questions regarding any issues, any methods, any scientific or any aspects of health communications that presented by the panelists in the respective sides, and issues can anybody raise, or any questions from the participants, please.
Do we have to type in or can we just directly ask?
You can directly ask the questions to the mentioning the name of the panelists presenters, and please.
Okay, I'd like to ask a question to Carmen Lai in regards to the Tibetan bowl. And I was wondering whether that Tibetan bowl is conducted like to all the classes, or it was just an experiment.
Carmen Lai, please.
Yes. Hi. Thank you for your question, Nia. It will be volunteered undergraduate students whom will be recruited through the university students body, and those who are interested to participate, they will volunteer to participate in this experiment of 8 weeks mindfulness training.
Okay. So they felt that they volunteered because they felt that they need some kind of a mental sanity type of exercise.
Yes, it's based on the volunteer basis because I feel that only by volunteering willingly, the participants then will be more motivated.
Thank you, Carmen Lai. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody wants to ask any questions? Hello. Hello. Anybody wants to ask any questions to any panelists, presenters? No question from the first participants. Maybe we actually discussed many things, many issues in health communications, like health informations, health messages, health misinformation, disinformations, mass media's role in health communications, healthcare professionals, healthcare mobile applications, and the journey of vaccinations, storytelling. Actually, what is the role of communication in personal well-being and the health promotions or communities' health development? This is significant. It has significant role in changing, in awareness building, in changing knowledge, it's developing knowledge, building knowledge, attitudes and behaviors, and then advocacy in the last phase. If you are aware, if your attitude is positive, if you practice, then you can move another stage for advocacy. That means you just suggest other people to follow the path of practices. So health communication is very, very important issues just discussed in this sessions. After this discussion, we can say how communication is a multidisciplinary field of study. Communication is a basic process of human life. In today's societies, it is more important than ever. When it comes to health communication, its significance is ever greater as it plays an important role, effective role in every aspect of health and well-being, including disease prevention, health promotions, and quality of life. Health communications, a friendly force, but the state and the non-state actors like mass media, other interpersonal communications, CSOs, NGOs, private sectors sometimes are applying the means and methods of health communication in an unplanned manner and planned ways. That means they are actually doing or applying the health communication after learning by doing. That means they face the health communications strategies after learning from the field experience. So all the discussions raise the issues very scientifically and positively to use the communications for the personal well-being, community well-being, and ultimately health promotion or health management of a countries. So now I'm request all the participants to turn on their cameras for picture taking. Can you turn
Excuse me,
on
sir.
our, yes.
Sir, I think I have a question from
Yeah.
Nia, from
Yes.
Dr. Nia.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if I could just answer that, she was asking, why didn't the government use the case in Kerala for India in 2021? That's a very logical question to ask, but I think one of the things that we learned from this whole pandemic is that a pan country, especially for a huge country like India, a pan India policy does not work. For example, the national lockdown that came in, like a sudden bolt from nowhere, it affected so many lives. People were stranded, migrant laborers were stranded, they were hungry, there was no work, there was no money. So even that policy has now been scrapped. It is very, very localized. The pandemic response now is very localized, and the responsibility primarily is on the state governments, except for, inbound, outbound travel from the country. Generally, the pandemic responsibility is on the state governments. Several states have tried to replicate certain aspects of what Kerala had did. But like I pointed out, Kerala has a huge advantage of having a strong public health system and a public health network, which did not come as a response to the pandemic. It was historically there. So, like I said, the success of the pandemic, response basically rides on that historic advantage that Kerala had. So it's only to a certain extent that it can be as such replicated. I think personally also, I feel that COVID response should come out based on what is your local reality. I hope I have answered your question, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank you,
very much.
Sangeeta. Thank you, Sangeeta, for your supplementary answers. And I think that's your Kerala model. I am also very interested in your research because your model is very, very, very effective. But do we have any communication model, health communication models in Kerala that are effectively used in to fight COVID-19? You mentioned your national perspective, your healthcare management, other health statistics, but is there any health model, local health model that are effectively used in Kerala, Sangeeta?
Yes. So we had this campaign called Break the Chain, right at the very beginning of the pandemic. It was basically to inculcate ideas of hygiene, social distancing and all that. It was very rigorous. It was a very rigorous campaign. All forms of media were used. There were WhatsApp videos created by the state government. There were broadcast channel advertisements. There were hoardings. It was all over the place. Even the Kerala police came out with, TikTok videos, very popular, very popular. Yes. Very popular, very interactive, Instagram reels, So in that sense, I think it is quite unique, and a lot of communicating strategies were actually taken in order to communicate directly to the public in a way that they find it interesting. And it came to a level where if you go out in the public without a mask, it becomes a taboo. I don't think we can say that for a lot of places even today. But in Kerala, if you don't wear a mask, first of all, the authorities are very strict. The police was very strict to a point that some people even said it was mildly abusive, because if you don't go out with a mask, then they will actually come down upon you. But now it's like a taboo. So we achieved that level of awareness because of our health communication strategies.
Okay, it's
Professor
good to know.
Mohammed, I can add some points to Dr. Sangeeta's
Yes.
comment. In Kerala, there is another communication model called SMS. It is another campaign. SMS stands for S for sanitize and M for wear mask, and another S for social distancing. And Kerala
SMS.
communicated three prominent ingredients or three prominent measures to control COVID through this SMS mean. And this SMS is a prominent health communication model in this COVID control. And also the government has a specialized application called GOK Direct to communicate directly to audiences with an authentic manner, in an official manner regarding the COVID aspects and the COVID death rate and the COVID issues and news. So these are two important models performed by the government of Kerala and communicated directly to the audience of Kerala.
Thank you, Augustine, for your complimentary answers, and we actually enriched by your presentation. And there's the Kerala model. We can follow that, and we can more do research more on the model and the communication model. And you know, the Odisha model is communication model is was very effective. Odisha model, and the Kerala model. You can work on more on these issues, how to effectively use this model, or any loopholes, or it can be used any more effectively, you can introduce this model globally. Your model, this is very effective model. So this is your duty as a communicator, as a communication specialist, to introduce this model globally, so that people or the experts can use it in their respective field to fight such pandemic. This is the good pandemic communication model. Okay, thank you. Any other else can raise any questions, or we will go to the next session to picture taking.
All right. May I request everyone to turn on their cameras?
Yes.
And
yes.
And please look at the camera, not the screen.
Please smile, please.
Okay. I'll be counting to 3. 1, 2, 3. Look at the camera, not the screen. Okay, again, I will count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Look at the camera. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks all.
Thank you very much, everyone. The plenary session is about to start. Feel free to go there after this session, and I hope you had a good parallel sessions with us. Thank you very much, sir. Professor.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, AMIC,
Thank you
for giving us the opportunity to moderating this prestigious conference. And I would like to thank all the panelists, participants, to communicate their presentations very effectively and more communicatively. So hope to see you again in another event, and we concludes our session here. Thank you all. Thank you for your.
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.